Hi everyone, I'm Sean Billings of Billings Surveying and Mapping here in Stumpwater, Texas, finishing up another hot August summer day. Right now we're set up under moderate canopy. We've got a tree overhead here, and then we've also got quite a bit of canopy to the south. Provides a potential for bad fixes in this kind of environment, but JFib gives us quite a few procedures that we can use to limit our exposure to that. So we'll take a look at a few of those verification procedures right now. Alright, we've already got our base station established through base rover setup. We're ready to begin our survey. We've created a new project and selected a coordinate system. Now we're in the field and we want to begin our survey. I'm going to change the rod height first. And while I survey in US survey feet, my rod is measured in meters, so I'm going to change the units for measuring the rod height to meters and select 1.5. Now on the map screen, because I have the current position enabled and the base station position enabled, we can see the current position and the base position. Base position is the red triangle and the green circle represents a fixed solution at a rover. As I showed you just a moment ago, the rover is in the trees. The base is in a very open position. It's very important that anytime you're doing an RTK survey, you want the base in open conditions. Do everything that you can to make sure that you have your base station in the open. And that way, when you take the rover into more challenging environments, the base corrections are unhindered. If you set up the base in bad location under a tree, that tree affects every shot from the rover. While that isn't the case for the rover, you take a shot under a tree and that tree affects that shot, but when you move out from under that tree no longer affects the rover. So it's important that we keep that in mind. I've got the white boxes on the left side and right side set to a couple of different things. One, we've got the point name in the upper left. Next, we have our verify statistics just below that. Below that, we have our base station statistics. We'll take a look at that. And we see the coordinates of the base in geodetic and grid coordinates for the coordinate system I have selected, as well as for the rover. And we see that we have 6 fixed engines. We're running with 7 GPS satellites and 4 GLONASS satellites. We've got RMS values at the 95% confidence level. A great screen to get a quick inspection of your position and your vector. So we'll just return back to the action screen. Because the rover is under trees, there is the potential for having a bad fix. I get asked a lot, do Javad receivers give a bad fix? In very difficult environments, I have seen it. Having said that, I've seen bad fixes with every receiver that I've ever used or seen, so it's not impossible to have that. What sets the Javad Triumph LS apart, JField software in particular, is that there's a process that we can enable that allows us to sniff out those bad fixes and disregard them before we ever accept them. Many of you that are practicing surveying, particularly with RTK for some time, know that it's always good to get a new fix to break the initialization of the rover when you're under a tree and take a second shot, and then compare that first shot and that second shot and see how they compare to prove out whether there was likely bad fix involved. Now that's just one single check. What we're going to take a look at here in just a moment is multiple checks performed at various times throughout the process. The button in the middle of the screen at the top is the quick setup button. It shows the current compass orientation. The brackets indicate that that's a grid direction. So what JField does, it takes the magnetic bearing from the internal compass, uses the world magnetic model, converts that to a geodetic bearing using magnetic declination, which is approximate, but it gets you closer, and then it applies the convergence angle for that particular position, and you now have a grid direction from a compass. The two values you see just above that, presently showing zeros, are the tilt values. These are using the automatic tilt sensors inside the receiver. So let's just push that button, the quick setup button, and it brings up a list of options. But we're going to really focus particularly with the stop after and the verify button for this video. So first let's take a look at the stop after. Okay, we've got several options. We could stop with the stop button, so that it'll just keep collecting a position until we're finished, and we just press the stop button. When tilted, using the lift and tilt, when those tilt sensors detect that the receiver has been tilted beyond a certain range, then recording automatically stops. It's great for just automatic recording, particularly for topographic positions. You could do a topographic survey of a surface and never actually touch the screen. But we're not going to really look at that with this particular setup. What we're looking at is after a particular period of time. In this case, I have 150 epochs, and we'll take a look at that. Auto accept. So if the receiver completes the time that has been specified and the values all fall within a particular tolerance, then the receiver will automatically accept without any input from the user. Auto restart is another handy feature, particularly for testing, as once the auto accepts the shot, then auto restart will automatically begin collecting the next shot. And so you could leave a receiver unattended for a very long time with the auto accept automatically accepting a shot, auto restart automatically beginning a new shot. Great features. Verify with reset. Let's take a look at that. Alright, so at the top we have two buttons, verify with reset, verify without reset. Verify with reset, it could also be called phase 1. It will just continue to reset the engines until a certain number of unique independent engine fixes has been accumulated. It's the confidence level, which is set to 10. Without V6 resets, the receiver would not automatically reset during phase 1. It would just immediately go into what's called phase 2. It's good to have a period of time where you're not constantly resetting the engines in order to improve the precision of the result. And so that would be phase 2, where the engines are left to simply run without resets and data is accumulated. And so the consistency level increments as you have more fixed engines. We can take a look at the help menu on the LS. And on the second page there, we see there on the bottom right that the consistency level is based on the number of engines used in each epoch. With one engine, the consistency level will only increase, or will not increase at all. It's a value of 0. With two engines fixed, it will only go up 0.1 per epoch. With that 10 consistency level that we have set, if we only had two engines fixed, it would take 100 epochs for the for consistency to be achieved. Now, in a more open spot, we've probably got more engines fixed. So let's say we've got 5 engines fixed. That increments up by a factor of 1. And so to get to a consistency level of 10 with 5 engines, it would only require 10 seconds to achieve that. We can see how as the receiver has an easier time or more difficult time of getting those engines fixed, that the consistency level will change, the way that it's accumulated will change accordingly. So let's go on back. And then just recently, Javad has added the validate result. early on, as you're beginning your data collection in phase one, you've got all of these engines resetting until your confidence level is achieved. In this case, as you see there, confidence level of 10. Once that confidence level is achieved, the resetting stops. LS is just left to maintain its fix and hopefully acquire more smooth, quieter epochs of data. And so it improves our precision a bit to collect that phase 2 data. Now with this phase 3, the validate result, what we have at the end of our collection, once the number of epochs have been accumulated, once the confidence level, consistency level has all been accumulated, we reset one last time the engines, and we don't attempt to begin again until the minimum number of engines has been fixed. In this case, I have it shown as 2, but we're going to go ahead and drop it down to 1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. So that's kind of an overview of V6 resets, but let's see it in actual use. So I'm going to go ahead and hit start. Alright, and immediately we take 2 epochs off of the initial fix. Then you see the engines are reset, we get another fix. Engines are reset, we get another fix, and we're watching for these data points from independent fixes to all fall within a certain agreement with one another from our confidence guard, and I'll show you the confidence guard in just a moment. But we're looking for all of these to fit within a particular bucket. Now we've exceeded our confidence counter of 10. You see it there now shown at 13.5, and now we've moved into the second phase, the smoothing phase, where we're relying more on the consistency counters. And you will probably notice that the initial epochs there on the vertical scale are probably going to be a little bit wider, and then it's going to get a little bit quieter as it continues on. This is because each of those initial data points was a single engine fix, where these later epochs are smoothed by, at this time, 6 fixed engines. Alright, so let's take a look at the anatomy of this screen. At the top, very top, we see fix 6/2:1, and then we see this 0.098 feet. What we're seeing here is the current number of fixed engines. If you push that button, it'll take you to our V6 screen, and we see that each of these 6 engines are represented by a block. The first one has 7 GPS satellites at the moment, 5 GLONASS satellites, indicated by the 7 and the 5 in the upper left and upper right. 1, 2, 3 across. All 3 of those first engines are 7 GPS satellites and 5 GLONASS satellites. At this point, we got a no data. That's because there was a slight interruption in the data stream coming from our base. As soon as the data was resumed, the fix was maintained, and we had no loss of fix. Now look at engines 4, 5, and 6 there. We see that those have 6 GPS satellites and 5 GLONASS satellites. Under the word fixed, you see the individual instantaneous RMS of the position for that engine. Alright, now then the next numbers that we see there on the just below the bars, we see 19, 20, 21, etc. That's the number of epochs that engine has been fixed. First, second, and third engines have been fixed for about 30 seconds. 4, 5, and 6 have not fixed. 4 and 5 have still not fixed after about 20 seconds of attempts. And so we can see the independent nature of each of these 6 engines. Inside this screen, we've got a few buttons. One on the far left is debug. That allows you to record 10 seconds worth of data and send that to our support team, so that if you're running into something that you think is particularly odd, then you can hit that data as soon as you get to an internet source is sent automatically to the support team along with your receiver information. Next to that, reset engines. That's a handy one. That resets all 6 engines at one time. So just press that and you see all 6 engines go to float, and then in just a few seconds now they're fixed. Then that gets us reset all of the engines, but you'll also notice that you can tap on a single block. I'm going to tap on engine 4 there, and you'll see that engine 4 goes to float. So you could maintain a fix with a couple of engines and manually accumulate fixes if you wanted to for your position just by going into this screen and resetting one of the fixed engines. Another button that we have in here is reset tracking, and that basically starts everything over. It's almost like retuning your car radio to acquire the satellite signals once again. So reset engines, that's a mathematical process as it's building and building on the mathematics of where the receiver is. Reset tracking begins the whole process of listening to the satellites. And we'll go ahead and hit that, and I'll show you what reset tracking looks like. Basically, it'll look very similar to reset engines, except you'll see the number of satellites typically will start off low and then build. That happened pretty quickly, so we really didn't get to see those satellites go up. There we just saw 4 go to 5 on the GLONASS satellites, but reset tracking is sometimes helpful if you're just not getting the tracking that you feel like you should, not getting fixes as robustly. Sometimes reset tracking can kind of help in those situations. That's a brief overview of the V6 screen here. Let's one more thing, this 0 in the middle is the age of the corrections coming from the base, and so we see that that's stayed at 0 for this time. If something had happened and the base communications had been interrupted, we'd see that 0 begin to tick up for each epoch that the receiver went without a base correction. Currently I've got the receiver set to only accept current corrections, no latency. Alright, and in the time that I spent telling you about the V6 screen, our shot was finished. Let's talk about some of the things that we see here. First, in the upper part of the screen, just below the quick setup button on the left, we see epochs, in parentheses 150. That represents the number of epochs that I needed. 160 is the number of epochs that I got. 150 plus the validate, which is an additional 10 seconds, and so that's why we have 160. The time that was required was 187 seconds. Next to that, we see HRMS of the average position is 2. 2 what? Look in the upper part of that button there, and you see 0.01, so that is 2/100ths of a foot in HRMS, 1 sigma. VRMS is 3/100ths. Confidence was set to 10, but over the period of that observation, it actually accumulated 19. At a minimum consistency requirement of 10, it went to 185.15. The reason for that is the LS will continue to collect data until all of those settings are satisfied. In this case, the setting that took the longest to satisfy was the amount of time. If I'd have had that set for 5 seconds, then the consistency counter would have required more time, and I'd have gone longer than 5 epochs of data. So it's going to accumulate points, data points for this position until all of those parameters have been established. The V drift is the amount of change in the vertical position. It can kind of be an indicator of multipath effects on your position. Alright, the two white boxes that we see just below that information, we see a 0.090 on the left and a 0.0138 on the right. This is the extreme spread of the solution. So on the left side we had a horizontal extreme spread of 0.09 of a foot. And on the right side we had an extreme spread of just a shade under 0.14 in vertical. Pretty quiet solution considering this was in the in some canopy. So let's go ahead and accept this shot. Alright, and we'll go ahead and begin another one. And we'll stay on this screen this time to watch it go through the process. So it's going through the phase 1 process to begin with. It's already gotten the first epoch, it's done a reset. Now it's got the second, third, and fourth that fast. Alright, now it's got the 6th, the 8th. It's accumulating pretty quickly here. Now it's finished with phase 1 and it's moved on to phase 2. Now with phase 2, the engines will be allowed to just maintain that fix and accumulate data. Now you see again on the vertical scale there that those first few epochs had a little bit of additional noise compared to the epochs that followed it. That's because those 6 engines are working together to smooth out the position, and so we're not seeing such a sporadic swing epoch to epoch. Doesn't mean we won't see that amount over the time of the solution, but just from epoch to epoch it's going to be smoothed out a little bit more. Alright, the white box in the bottom right, that is a particular custom white box that shows distance to last. And so right now in the upper part of that we see that the distance to last is about 1/10 of a foot horizontal and about 0.005 of a foot vertical. Now look at that V drift number. Now we're starting to see what looks to be a line instead of this nice smooth up and down kind of a sine wave. We're seeing a line that's just shooting straight up, and we're seeing a relatively low RMS along with that. That's an indication that there may be some multipath working on our solution. And we can see that extreme spread's already up to 0.22. That's quite a bit more than what we had on our previous observation, even though the vertical difference between this observation and the previous is still fairly low. So we're waiting to accumulate 150 epochs. We've already exceeded the confidence counter, we've already exceeded the consistency counter. So now we're just looking for that 150 epochs to accumulate. The scatter plot on the horizontal side looks fairly reasonable. It's got a few dots kind of outside the general cluster, but it's not. There's nothing there that really looks alarming in the way those points are distributed. And typically speaking, you're going to see, particularly in the open, you're going to see a lot more consistency between two shots simultaneously observed. Again, you've seen the conditions. This is, in some trees and such. So I intentionally gave us a little bit of a challenging location so that we would see some discrepancy, and we've got some there of about 1/10 of a foot between that first shot and the second. So let's go ahead and accept that. And we'll do one more and then we'll change up a few things. Alright, so now we're comparing epoch by epoch to the last shot, point 2. And so you see there briefly, it looked like there was a hiccup in there where we had about 7 feet. So let's see if we can trap a bad fix. Okay, so we've got two epochs. Horizontally, they're only 5 thousandths apart and 400ths apart in vertical. We're waiting for the receiver to get that new fix. Currently, all of the fixes are agreeing really well with one another. Now we've made it past that confidence counter of 10, and we begin to move into that phase 2 of smoothing. You'll notice that in 29 seconds we've already exceeded the consistency counter of 10. With those 5 engines, you recall, we're accumulating 1 consistency mark per epoch, so it's just going to tick away fairly quickly. Look at that V drift. We see that the RMS is quite a bit higher than the V drift. The V drift right now is horizontal, so the average or linear regression of those points is practically horizontal. There's no slope to it. And the RMS is, with it being 9, it just tells us that the solution is just bouncing back and forth on either side of that linear regression. So the 5/2:1 in the fix button indicates that there are currently 5 engines. At a minimum, I'm requiring 2 fixed engines in phase 2 for it to even include that epoch in the solution, and 1 engine is being required for validate, which is what the :1 stands for. Now, if we get to the end of this and validate with its single engine fix doesn't agree with the solution that's already been presented, it'll reset, and it will just continue to reset for up to 10 times before it will finally wipe the slate clean and start over. Alright, so now we're at the validate stage. And once we get a fixed engine, it'll compare that fixed engine to the general average of the points already collected and see if this new fix agrees with that average. And it has. Those final 10 epochs agreed, so we had a fix at the end that lasted for 10 seconds that was completely unique to those initial 10 different fixes that we had at the beginning. That's a pretty good comparison. So it gives us a little bit of time separation to get the satellites changing just a little bit, maybe the environment changing just a little bit if we've got a little breeze blowing through the trees. With your typical data collector, rather than having that one single fix and that manual comparison that you're having to do for each shot, this is resetting those engines, comparing it for you, and applying those comparisons to the final average. So let's change up something here. Rather than 150 epochs, we're going to change it to 10. We're still going to leave our confidence level for right now set to 10. Our consistency level we're going to change to something a bit higher. We're going to make it 20. Everything else for right now we'll leave the same. Let me, before we leave here, talk about the confidence guard. The confidence guard is the tolerance set by the user of how we consider things in agreement. If we have two fixes that horizontally disagree by in excess of 0.131, which is 4 centimeters, but 0.131 U.S. survey feet, then those two fixes are considered out of agreement, and they'll be placed in two separate buckets, what we call buckets. And whichever bucket ultimately fills up the fastest will be considered the valid fix, and whichever bucket not the fastest to fill up is discarded once we begin phase 2. The confidence guard, like I said, 0.131 horizontal, 0.23 vertical. So if we have two fixes that disagree with each other in excess of that confidence guard amount, then a new group is formed. And once phase 1 is complete, that initial period of resets, the bucket with the most fixes in it is accepted and the others are discarded. And the user is able to control how many groups or buckets they're willing to allow to be continued. If I'm in a really miserable spot, a lot of times I'll use as many as 5 buckets to give this LS plenty of opportunity to accumulate several buckets or keep several buckets going at one time to see which one fills up the fastest. Alright, so let's collect a point. Remember, we're only requiring 10 epochs for this. We've already got 1, 2 epochs recorded, 3 epochs recorded, 5, 6. Okay, we've already exceeded the number of epochs that we need, but our consistency counter hasn't achieved its 20 yet, so it's going to continue to record data until that consistency level reaches 20. Alright, we've reached 20. Now we're going through the validate phase, and the engines were reset, giving us that one last opportunity to get that fix. Alright, now then I'm going to move the instrument so that we can see if we can get a little bit more difficult spot, maybe force a bad fix. So give me just a moment to take care of that. Alright, I've moved the LS about 114 feet from where it was to a more difficult location, and I've also changed the settings in the LS to make it a bit more susceptible to getting a bad fix. And so I haven't changed any other settings. We're still looking at 10 epochs with a consistency of 20 and a confidence of 10. So let's give it a try. Alright, so now we see what happens whenever there is a bad fix. We've got two different potential possibilities for where the proper fix could be. Currently, the fix with the most fixes supporting it is shown in brackets. We see that we've got 5 epochs where the solution was agreed within that confidence counter that we were talking about a minute ago. You see that the first 2 epochs that we have been discounted and don't appear to be, at least at this moment, don't appear to be correct. Okay, now we've got another 2 that have appeared. Alright, now then a 4th group came into the picture, and because there was a 4th group and I've got the LS set to only, at current, only allow 3 groups to be simultaneously evaluated. It wiped everything out and started from scratch. So now we have two differing fixes, and currently the first one gets precedence with its, even though they have the same number of epochs in each solution. And so this process continues to repeat over time until your specified number of epochs or fixes are achieved. And you can see in a very short amount of time it was possible to have at least 2 or 3 bad fixes. So, alright, so now we have several seconds, 48 seconds between the first fix in that second bucket and the second fix in that bucket. So we've got some time separation. That's definitely a good thing, but let's continue to watch and see what happens. The particular place I now have the LSN is right next to some crepe myrtles, which are also under an oak tree, with the oak tree to the south, the crepe myrtles to the southeast. Very thick, mature crepe myrtles. My 2-story house directly north. It's a bad spot. Not really suitable for GPS, but I was having such a difficult time getting a bad fix in our mediocre spot back there that I really wanted to challenge the receiver, and I had to really scooch in close to those crepe myrtles in order to do it, and also turn the fixing confidence down to low instead of medium where it normally is, so it's a little more susceptible to those bad fixes. So now we see we have a confidence of 4 with our now 5 with our prevalent bucket right there. And most likely, if another bucket starts a unique bad fix that doesn't agree with the first 3, it'll start the process all over again, and I'll probably need to up my buckets, maybe to something like 5, so that it'll allow multiple buckets to be evaluated at the same time, or multiple groups to be evaluated at the same time, until we see give one of them a chance to accumulate those 10 unique fixes that I've required. Another great thing about this procedure is you can leave the receiver basically unattended while it does this work. We push the start button and we can go about other things. There we have a 4th group. So what I'm going to do is just stop here. I'm going to go ahead and go in and change our groups, max groups right there, from 3 to 5. We'll see if we get to the thing about canopy is when people ask me, does it work under canopy? It's a really difficult question to answer because everyone's definition of thick canopy versus moderate canopy is such a subjective definition, and also so much depends on satellite constellation. When you try to work in a particular place under a particular constellation, it can be really difficult to get a fix sometimes, and then you come back at a different time with a different constellation, may or may not even be more satellites, may just be in a different position, and suddenly you're able to get a fix very easily, and you verify that fix, and that's good. So It's just a really interesting, peculiar thing that just makes it really difficult to give a solid answer on. It's just very much an experiential thing. And so here we see we got 8, 9, 10. Okay, so we've achieved our confidence level. And now we move straight on into, in just a moment, we'll move straight on into the second phase. We'll see the screen's changed a little bit. And now everything's going to be evaluated with the proven, semi-proven 10 unique fixes that we have. Okay, we've achieved our consistency level of 20, and so the engines have reset. And now we've our validate's going through, and the validate on the first try was able to agree with the 10 unique fixes that we got from the phase 1. So there we are. We've got a defensible position based on upwards of 17 unique fixes. All right, let's try it again. Okay, interestingly, this time it made it through that step 1 procedure very quickly. And you'll notice on the bottom right the difference between the current average of this point and the position we had for the previous point is very small. It's a really good agreement between these 2 points, particularly given where they are, or where this point is. Okay, we've reached the consistency counter of 20 point, or up to 20.6. Validate has caused the engines to reset, and that reset is in substantial agreement, and so we've got a good solution there. Again, we've got 16 unique fixes for this particular point, and we've got a terrific agreement with the previous point that had 17 unique fixes. That's just really good. And so that's been our verified procedure. It allows us to get unique fixes on the front end, so we're not wasting our time collecting data, hopefully, through that second phase. Once we get into the second phase, we've got some reason to believe that we've got a good fix working. We'll go through that consistency phase, smoothing phase, and then we get to the validate phase, phase 3, reset those engines for one last check, gives us the maximum separation of time between the first fix and this last fix, and then we collect for an additional 10 seconds. And if at any point those fixes don't agree, then they're kicked out. And if more than 30% of the fixes or epochs get kicked out, then it starts the whole process over again. Hopefully, even though the receiver does have the potential to give a bad fix, as we've seen here when we really push it, even though we do have that potential to have a bad fix, we have every indication that we might have a bad fix, and we have the filtering tools to automatically remove those bad fixes and help us to achieve nothing but good fixes. That's what I've got for you. This is Sean Billings, Billings Surveying and Mapping, and we'll talk to you next time.